Hello, sixth grade. Hey, I'm going to go over lesson 11, paragraphs 20 through 23, which we did in lesson 10, but this time we're going to answer the questions. So I'm going to reread those four paragraphs, and you should follow along as I do. And what's important is we don't always memorize what it is we read, so I mean, it's not going to hurt us to read it more than one time. Okay. Paragraph 20. This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can now say this to you with a bit more certainty than when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept. Paragraph 21. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that is as it should be, because death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you, but someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it is quite true. Paragraph 22. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinion drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Paragraph 23. When I was young, there was an amazing publication called The Whole Earth's Catalog, which was one of the Bibles of my generation. It was created by a fellow named Stuart Brand, not far from here in Menlo Park, and he brought it to life with his poetic touch. This was in the late 1960s, before personal computers and desktop publishing. So it was all made with typewriters, scissors, and Polaroid cameras. It was sort of like Google in paperback form, 35 years before Google came along. It was idealistic and overflowing with neat tools and great notions. Now we're going to answer the questions in our lesson. So in paragraph 20, Steve Jobs says, "This was the closest I've been to facing death, and I hope it's the closest I get for a few more decades. Having lived through it, I can say this to you with a bit more certainty that when death was a useful but purely intellectual concept." Okay, so how does this paragraph set up and prepare us? And prepare us for what he says in paragraphs 21 and 22, the next two paragraphs. It makes us realize that Steve Jobs knows about death because he has come very close to dying. So he had, according to him, it didn't go into any detail, a near death experience. Okay, what impact does it have on the reader? So it sets us up to trust what he is going to say more than we would if he didn't have those personal life experiences. A lot of time when people have gone through things themselves, it kind of gives us, we can kind of trust what they say because they've been through it before. So that's why we trust older people and their lessons when they try to tell us things because they've gone through a lot of those things before. So it's kind of like that. So in paragraph 22, Steve Jobs says, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life." Okay, the question goes, having read the paragraphs before, how does he come to that rule? So that's one of his rules, kind of like in Bud Not Buddy. He had his rules to live by, and this is one of Steve Jobs' rules. It means that life is short, so focus on what is on in your own life, and don't waste time worrying about what other people are doing. You're not going to please everybody. Okay, he comes to that rule by coming close to death himself, which made him realize how short life can be. So, in uncertain times, we don't always know how long, and we don't know how long we have. So, we need to make the most of every day that we have. So, he's saying that you need to live life within reason. I'm not telling you to go against your parents, but to make yourself happy. Okay, what are the rules for life that Steve Jobs gives us in this paragraph 23? Don't spend your life restricting yourself because of what other people tell you. So that is the rule, and that would be what we would cite as our text evidence because that's actually what he said. Okay, and then our last question was, are the rules to help us survive or thrive, and why? Okay, we know what survival is because we went through that last week. Survival is what we need to do in order to stay alive, and thrive is what we do to make us happy, to fulfill our life. So, to answer that, the rules are to thrive because they don't save him from a life or death situation, but they help him to be better in life. So, it wasn't a matter of life and death, but it did have to do with him being happy and becoming successful. Being successful is not always measured in money. Sometimes you don't get paid a lot to do what you love to do, but you enjoy doing it anyway. So that's what he's saying, um to thrive, to do what makes you happy. Okay, that would conclude our lesson. And what you need to do is read the next chapter of Bud Not Buddy, which I believe would be chapter 12 if you've not already. But of course, you can always read more. All right, have a good night, and I will talk to you soon.